The world of data is evolving, and healthcare informatics isn't what it used to be. McKesson has to use big data, leverage it to really grow its business. And I'm excited today to talk about how that's going to happen. Our focus is going to be on improving data usability. It's going to focus on emerging trends, and we're going to talk about shifting the domain of data. Now, in our discussion today, I have quite a few different slides that we're going to talk about. It's going to encompass the understandings, the contemporary issues, data usability, trends, the data analytics pipeline, and the future. So, what is big data? Big data is something that comes from everywhere. And when I mean something, I'm talking about data points. Big data is prescriptions. Big data is data from behind an app. Big data is insurance claims. Big data is just about anything. Big data is this big decentralized glob of information that comes unformatted and comes overwhelmingly and gets put all together. And what McKesson wants to do is they want to make use of that big glob. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So how is it used? Well, McKesson goes through a process for big data where they centralize it all in a warehouse. They split up the workload into a whole bunch of separate nodes, and they run the processing concurrently, and then they turn it into useful data. But there's a lot, because not only is there just a high volume, but there's also more regulations being put in place saying that the data needs to be timely, and people's lives are on the line, so it has to be timely. But if we can pivot to something where we can use this data correctly, it can become an asset rather than a liability. Now, this overwhelming supply of information, being that it's decentralized, is a problem. So we developed these warehouses I was talking about, where we go through the start of the data pipeline, and we use the data warehouse to pool all the data into a place that's usable. And then we reconcile our problem with limited processing capability by splitting up the data into work over multiple platforms. And that's the start of making data usable. But the real process of making data usable comes from having it ingrained in the culture. There was this guy in McKesson, I'll read it to you. He's the VP Chief Medical Officer of Connected Care and Analytics. So this guy's he has weight. And he says, you don't get value from data absent good analysis or an effective program to leverage it. And what is he talking about? Well, he's saying that data is just data sitting in a hard drive if you don't know how to harness its potential. And that's the trick to data. And it's not just having people who know how to use data. It's also making it the culture, bake it into the training. Make it so people know from the get-go that data is important. And then normalize it, automate it, make it so it just happens. It's not a thought. It's not a voluntary thing. And when you do that, it makes data much stronger. And then when you do that, you can start using it to focus on emerging trends. You can put it into research and development. You can put it into patient profile analytics. You can put it into market penetration. McKesson talks about Salesforce. It's this system that they use to generate RFPs, which are requests for proposals. It's a whole bunch of jargon. Basically means it's them trying to get new business. And the more data that they can use and consume and develop to drive insights, they can hedge their bets on what the best RFPs are. So how does that data get used and created and consumed? Well, there's this pipeline. It starts with engineering, and then it goes to preparation, and then goes to analytics. But basically, it's setting up the server, getting the tables normalized, it's like a foundation of a house. So you can't build a house on mud, and you can't have data analytics that grow the business out of a trash bag of data. It has to make sense, and it has to work, and it has to be efficient. So you build the data and you create the warehouse. And then once you do, then it's ready to be prepared. You pull it out of you enhance it, you transform it, you refine it, you blend it. And once you do all that, you've met the business need of getting it ready. Then you turn it into something. That's where the data analyst becomes an artist, and that's where the talent comes into play. That's where you turn this big, long sheet of information, maybe a 10,000 row Excel spreadsheet, into a graph. Then you forecast with the graph to make it into something usable and great that tells a story to the business. It can tell seasonality, it can tell trends, it can tell where the business is going. See, that's the whole thing about the domain of analytics. It's always been descriptive. It's always been quality assurance. It's always been something that's, hey, what did we do? How do we fix it? It's never been prescriptive. It's never given us the instructions. Instead, we've given the instructions to the data. So that's the focus now. McKesson is trying to pivot to a 360-degree view of the customer, a 360-degree view from backwards to forward-facing data, where we can use it in a way that we've never used it before. That's going to allow us to do statistical modeling, the clustering, regression, all this fancy stuff that makes the data speak to us. We get that tangible benefit where we can make business decisions not just on gut anymore. Now it's driven by insight, which is the most incredible thing once you've got it done. And the future is going to be great. It's going to be transformative. And it's going to change. The landscape's going to change. There's 5G technology and the Internet of Things coming out where we're going to get even more streams of data. There's people who want services on demand, and they want us to understand them more than they even understand themselves. But if we can get this foundation down, this pipeline, if we can shift the domain of analytics, and if we can understand big data, we can focus on a transformative, enhanced treatment. We can have healthcare management, better customer relationship management, all these things that are going to make McKesson positioned to sell the complete package. They're not just going to be a pharmaceutical distributor. They're going to be somebody who can recommend solutions, who can look at trends, who can sell the whole package. So that is the deal. We need to make sure that big data is the big picture. We need to focus on how we're going to resolve big data, contemporary issues, emerging trends, the pipeline, and shifting the domain of analytics. So it's been a real pleasure talking to you today, and I hope you learned a lot from my presentation. And thank you so much for having me in your class. Have a nice day.